In the first year of Jamestown, what was the reaction of Native Americans? No, they didn't think the English were gods. They helped them, okay? In the first year, the Indians helped. Remember that the Indians of Virginia were identified by their chief. They're called the Powhatans, okay? And they find themselves helping the people, and then they realize that these men who come to Jamestown are greedy. All they're looking for is gold. They expect the Indians to grow all the food, provide them with all their necessities, and some of them are starting to look at their land. They're not very happy. Okay, that's when things change. But the first year, they're very helpful. The purpose of Jamestown: to bring wealth to the investors. Remember, Jamestown was founded by a joint stock company, the Virginia Company of London, and they expected to get money, find gold and silver, whatever wealth that they could extract from the colony. What characterized the Chesapeake colony? Let's make sure we remember that Chesapeake is the area in Virginia and Maryland along the coast, okay, the Chesapeake Bay. What characterized Chesapeake colony? A, religious toleration. B, that they had big families. C, that they had a high death rate. D, that the majority of immigrants were from Africa. High death rate. Really, from 1607 to about 1650, half of anybody who came to Virginia died. Okay, it was really a horrible problem. Religious toleration only is true in Maryland, the Maryland part of the Chesapeake. They had big families? No, because there were not very many women for the first 20, 30 years of Virginia and Maryland history. Majority of immigrants from Africa? Not true. There was slavery in Virginia, but it was rare until 1660s, 1680s, in that time period, okay? Tidewater versus Piedmont. Tidewater is the coastal plain where the big plantations eventually developed. People lived along the river. They used rivers for transportation of goods and themselves. The Piedmont, or the rolling hills of Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, it's where people had smaller farms. Most of them were subsistent farmers. Most of the early settlers in the Piedmont were actually former indentured servants. Virginia export, the major export of Virginia was tobacco, introduced by John Rolfe, R-O-L-F-E, John Rolfe. Export crops of the colonies, the northern colonies, exported a couple of things to make money. Lumber, wood, timber, whatever you want to call it, wood, anyway. Fish, they would go fishing and then either dry the fish and send it back to Europe or salt it and send it back. Eventually, in the 1700s, they got involved in rum and exported rum. They bought the molasses from the Caribbean, processed it into rum, and then sold it. Okay. Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina, tobacco. Okay, the major export was tobacco. South Carolina, the major export was what? Not till 1700s. What is it in the 1600s? Rice. Okay, and then in the early 1700s they added indigo. So for South Carolina, you can say rice and indigo. The middle colonies, which are, first of all, let's talk about which are the four middle colonies. Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Delaware, okay? Those are the four main middle colonies. And their main export was wheat or grain, food anyway, okay, food stuff. Indentures, another way to say indentured servants. Okay, remember that indentured servants or indentures were people whose passage was paid by someone to come to America, and for that you had to work usually 7 years. At the end of 7 years, if you were still alive, you were freed and you were given some farm utensils like a shovel, a pickaxe, a hoe, etc., and a suit of clothing and a bushel of corn. okay? And you went out, and most of them had no money, so they couldn't afford to buy land, so they did what? They squatted. They just took over some land in the hills, cleared the acreage, and started growing crops and raising a family, etc. Effects of indentured servants. It gave a source of labor until the late 1600s. By 1670s, things are getting tense between the indentures and the people who they used to work for, okay? First of all, those indentures thought that they were equal now. Now that they'd served their sentence, they're equal to you and me. That causes some problems. They expect the same rights and privileges, and oftentimes they're not afforded them, and that causes problems. The other problem with indentures was that every 7 years you were having to replace them. If I bought you as a slave at age 12, could I expect a full day's work from you at age 12? Oh yeah. Okay. I know now, think about your little brother or sister that's in 6th or 7th grade. We don't expect a full day's work from them, but in 1620 or 1650 we did. If I buy you at age 12, how long are you my slave for? Forever, until you die. Okay, so if you don't die until you're 50, I've got you as a slave for 38 years. That's a lot of indentured servants. That's 5 different indentured servants, or 5 and a half, if you will. Okay? Slaves were easier to control because you owned them. And there are the historians who make the argument about the whole racial issue too, that slaves were viewed as different because they were black, whereas indentures were white. Head rights. When you paid someone's passage to the New World, you got 50 acres. This was an idea proposed by a guy named Sir Sandys. Okay? Companies began to realize that they wanted people to come and settle on their land. And so rather than just selling the land, because they didn't know if they could get people to buy it and come sight unseen, they would give land away for 50 acres per passage paid. And in order to make money then, this has not ever been on the test, but it would be a good essay thing to remember, quit rents. The proprietor or the owners of the colonies charged you a yearly tax. It's like a property tax today, okay? So we charge you this tax, you pay your quit rent every year, and that's how I, as a proprietor, make money. House of Burgesses, 1619 Virginia, the first legislative body in the Americas. You had to be elected to be a member of the House of Burgesses, okay? How did they determine who got to vote in Virginia? You had to own land, okay, or property. So wealth is a good enough way to say it. All right, Bacon, Shays, and that should be spelled S-H-A-Y-S apostrophe S, or regulator rebellions, all revolting against what? Okay, real quickly I'll run through the rebellions and you tell me what the common theme is, who they're revolting against. Bacon's Rebellion, 1676. Western Virginia farmers want help from the government in Jamestown to get rid of the Indians because the Indians are causing problems for them. The government doesn't want to do anything because the governor controls the fur trade, so the settlers take it upon themselves to basically wipe out the Indians. Then they march on Jamestown and burn it. Shays Rebellion, 1787, Western Pennsylvania or Western Massachusetts. The settlers there, or the people who live there, feel like their property tax is too high. To pay their Revolutionary War debt, Massachusetts has raised the property tax. If you can't pay your property tax, they take away your land. That's what's happening in Massachusetts, so they revolt. They close down some courthouses so that they can't take away farms. The regulator movement occurred in North Carolina with Western farmers, once again unhappy with the government in the eastern part of the state, and so they revolted. So all 3 rebellions, what did they rebel against? The government. It's a lesson the English should have learned over a period of time, that Americans were willing to take up arms against the government. Okay? Willing to take up arms against the government.